Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with another episode of Music Biz Chat. And this is where I look at vinyl and CD sales from the UK perspective. And there'll be a longer version soon once I've got the data in for the whole of 2024. In this small video, I wanted to just look at the vinyl market in particular. I will mention CDs because, as you know, I am a multi-format man, and CD format is just as important to me as vinyl. But I thought this was an interesting bit of information that I've come across. Vinyl sales, the music industry and the BPI will soon say that vinyl sales have gone up again for the 17th consecutive year, and they have. But we have to remember that most people consume music by streaming, which has also gone up. It's about 85%. So the physical aspect of CDs and vinyl is about 15%. It does vary on the different times of year. Obviously at Christmas, more people buy each other gifts for vinyl records and CDs, which is great, but it's around 15%. Now, some of you may remember I interviewed Karen Emanuel from the Key Production Company, who are one of the UK's largest pressing plants for both vinyl. They also create box sets and, of course, CDs as well. And Karen had mentioned the last time I spoke to her that were we reaching peak vinyl? She was not talking about the fact that we reached a point where less people were going to buy vinyl records. It was more to do with the fact that were we reaching a point where the amount of people who were coming into the market to actually make them was reaching saturation point. So from one part of the worldview is that record sales are going up. CD sales have leveled off and are still doing incredibly well. Do you remember that statistic where I said Coldplay sold 180,000 CDs in 1 week? So the CD is fine. But vinyl, of course, we've seen pricing is all over the place, especially like high street shops like HMV. But I wanted to just make you aware that where we had just a few years ago, hardly any, just some old antiquated pressing plants that couldn't believe it that people were starting to buy records again. And we ended up with like lead-in times that were months and months and months to get your record pressed because there was just no capacity. We don't have that situation now. We have capacity. There are literally no lead-in times. If you want to send your artwork and your record off to get pressed, you can get it done really, really quickly. But what we're seeing after this kind of flurry of new pressing plants and new companies coming on board, almost seeing it like a craft beer industry type thing. Let's make records. I'm a music fan and get involved in it. These are factories. This is a very technical and sophisticated job. But what's happened in the last 12 months is that pressing plants are actually starting to go bankrupt and go out of business. And this is not because people are buying less records. It's just that the people now pressing them are realizing there probably isn't enough to go around. In this month's Record Collector magazine, I just want to read this out. It was an article called Under Pressure, which is about pressing plants. And there's one particular guy, Adam Teskey from the Vinyl Factory. And he said, he's admitted, it's hard for us not to be a bit negative about the downturn in volume of our record production in 2024. I've had a conversation with the guys at the British Phonographic Industry, BPI, and they're reporting year-on-year sales growth again. However, we produced nearly 2 million vinyl albums in 2022-23, but less than 1 million in 2023-24. And in 24-25, we'll be lucky to scrape 1 million units again. I find it really vexing on how our own manufacturing trend is tracking in completely the opposite direction to the retail sales figures. And I think that really brings it home, doesn't it? That you have to remember that the physical music market is a niche. It's not going to keep growing because less people are going to stream. I mean, okay, something might happen in that area, but it's not going to be like 1976 or whatever. It's confined. I've always said on this channel and on the Now Spinning Magazine website that people that buy records and CDs, it's niche. That it's wonderful that there are younger people coming into the market and loving to buy records. My youngest son really loves buying albums, etc. But it's not going to be like it was. So more and more people coming along think, let's have a bit of that pie and press the records. You're not going to be able to push the prices up, because the more people that make them, in a way, the prices become flat, because the record labels can then think, who can press this and what's the best price you can give me? Whereas they haven't been able to do that before. But I imagine the way we've headed is they can do exactly that. And of course, anybody that has quality control issues, more returns, the next time that record label wants something pressed, they're not going to go there anymore. They're going to go to somebody else. So this isn't a case of all these pressing plants thinking, well, we can put our price up per unit, because they can't. Because if someone over the way doesn't, then the record labels are going to go and use them, because there is lots of capacity now. There is, in Europe, capacity for, well, vinyl production is actually down overall to be all the people that do it, and more businesses, as I've said, have gone out of business. The cost per record roughly is around £2.50 to £3.50 per unit. And where these pressing plants were getting 1,000, jobs that are over thousands long, they're now a few hundred. And I think that's what we're seeing more of. And even the bigger labels are actually seeing things as a project by project basis. So not, well, let's press this and it will be on catalogue for the next so many years. It's like, let's press this. It's a project. This is how many we want. Once we've got our money back, we're done. I mean, we're seeing this especially with CDs as well. I mean, I do hope, for instance, the Roy Gallagher box set gets repressed, but it could easily be seen as that was a one-off project and all the people behind it now have moved on to something different. I hope that's not the case. I want to finish this video on thinking about quality control with vinyl, but also the consumer's expectations based on who you are and your own demographic. Now, I'll be very interested to hear from younger viewers, younger, music collectors in your teens and 20s, specifically who've just started buying records. And what I want to kind of highlight here is that when I started buying albums, the vinyl record is not a perfect medium. You can play them on very cheap record players and very expensive record players, which can be tens of thousands of pounds. Most of us don't do that. We have a hi-fi or record player, whatever you're doing, playing it in your bedroom or in your living room or your music room, etc. But with a vinyl record, you see that there's a meme that says vinyl's background noise, life has background noise, to kind of tell you that it's more organic, it's more warm, etc. However, if you grew up in the CD age and streaming, you got used to the idea that between the tracks or before the album even started was silence. Nothing at all. I remember the first time I ever heard a CD, and it was on headphones, and the person who put the headphones on said, "Don't have it too loud, Phil, because there is nothing and then the music." And it'll be a bit of a surprise, and because when you put an album on, when I was first starting out with music, you put an album on, you turn it up to the volume you wanted it to be, which obviously being a teenager was far louder than the speakers are designed to probably go. You would pick up the rumble as the stylus hit the record. Well, okay. Not hit. I did look after them. The rumble, and just even you could almost hear a pre-echo before the music started, and then the odd click and whatever. It just was records, and in between the tracks there was a rumble, etc. There was sound between the music. So I never took a record back for that. If it jumped and it was warped, which was very rare. Because records then weren't kind of in cellophane wrapped or anything, vacuum packed. They were just in the racks and you bought one. And if it was scratched, which was rare, you took it back to the shop you bought it from. They gave you another one because they had another one on the shelf. Almost undoubtedly they did. But now these records can be a pressing of 300, 150 copies. And I just wonder, and there has been some pressing issues with more recent vinyl. So I'm not there has been. And that's another thing that I think that's hit the industry. But if a CD is costing you £12 and streaming is obviously just your monthly subscription and you play the music, and then you're going to buy something that's the luxury end, it's £40 or £35 for a double album, and the CD is 12 or 15, whatever. And as I said, you play it and there it is, it's done, it's perfect. And you buy the record and you put it on and you hear a bit of a rumble, a slight click or tick somewhere, and you have to wipe the paper dust off, because not everyone has got a vinyl cleaner, whatever, because they cost hundreds of pounds. Do you just accept that as it's vinyl, or do you think there's something wrong with it and send it back? Because I'd be very interested to know how people perceive vinyl in that way. To me, records, the more you play them, the more sound comes along with them. Okay, you can clean them or wash them or whatever, and you can have what's called, it's a really silent pressing, because you don't really say it's a really silent CD pressing, because they're just silent apart from the music. But with vinyl, you do. But the more you play vinyl, and I'm from the generation where I used to have records all over the place. After a listening party or, whatever, I'd just have records out because I'd play different tracks and whatever, and then I'd put them all away again. And then I'd wipe them down with me velvet cloth or whatever. And that's, to me, is records. But now, of course, because they are more expensive and the prices are all over the place, how do you feel? If, are you looking for the slightest imperfection, the slightest dink in the sleeve or biffed edge and sending it back? And the slightest sound might be the click on the last track on side 2, just once, but I'm not having that. Be very interested to know, because I think that, I suppose that's not two arguments, but two discussions really. But I think it's interesting that we reached a point where the pressing plants, we've reached a point where we have reached peak vinyl. For the people making the product, I don't think there's room at the moment for anyone else to probably join in, especially if, although record sales are going up, the number of units being pressed is being divided amongst more people who can't really charge anymore, as I said, because the record labels will just go to the label, the pressing plant that gives them the best price. But equally, the quality side. What is the perception of younger music buyers to the fact that vinyl is more of an organic, living thing that actually isn't going to sound like that CD did after its 89th play, which it sounded exactly the same as when you first bought it, whereas the record will have other things attached with it. And of course, you've got to make sure your stylus is brand new as well. Remember, I am a multi-format man, so I love both formats, but I'm just very interested in what your thoughts are on this. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. There'll be a more in-depth look at the state of the physical music market very, very soon when I've got all the stats in. But remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Buy a t-shirt, become a patron, a YouTube member, and get to join 2 private groups, one on WhatsApp and one on Facebook, and chat to like-minded music fans. And keep spinning those discs, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon.